How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and as you guys can see, we're back at it, breaking down all the latest key reports in Mets land, and in yet another jam-packed segment today, that being March 21st, 2026, Saturday. At the time this video first dropping, plenty to get into, headlined by the fact that Carlos Mendoza, Mets skipper, has officially announced Mets opening day rotation. We're going to get into what that configuration is, what this means for the Samoan Southpaw and Sean Manaea. How does Sean feel as he spoke to the media, letting it be known what his role will be to begin the season? Is this what we were hoping as Mets fans, or was this something contrary to that? As we'll break down. From there, we'll get into the Mets outfield configuration. Carson Benge is all set to make this Mets team. We know that. We're going to get into what is happening with Benge as he looked fantastic in play yesterday, and how this compares and contrasts with Mike Tauchman, who sadly went out with injury for the Amazons today in his latest spring training game. And speaking of that spring training game, we're going to give you guys full details, highlights, and statistics for the Mets split squad matchups against both the Houston Astros and the Washington Nationals, as well as the key takeaways from yesterday's matchup against the Cardinals. Mark Vientos finally did something productive. We'll break that down and a whole lot more in Mets land. So hit that like and subscribe button on your way in. Let me know your thoughts, reactions, and most certainly analysis in the comments down below regarding everything that we're going to get into in this one. And thank you guys kindly for helping us get to 38,000 subscribers. We're oh so close, everybody, and we're giving away a brand stinking new Bo Bichette or Freddie Peralta jersey to one lucky sub once we get to that milestone. Opening day's right around the corner. We're getting oh so close. Help us get there, everybody, as we have some massive announcements that'll be unveiled this week for you guys as we get set for opening day. And shout out to our amazing sponsor that makes every single show here happen, that being at SeatGeek, that has you covered for all of your ticketing needs. Simply utilize our promo code WARDY10. Again, that is WARDY10 for 10% off whatever you need in the ticketing space. Whether that is Mets opening day tickets, regular season tickets, get them while you can, everybody, or whether you need it for NHL tickets, NBA tickets, concerts, comedies, anything and everything ticketing-wise, SeatGeek has you covered. Use the promo code today, WARDY10, for 10% off, WARDY10, and thank you guys kindly for that. Now, let's waste no time. Let's hop right into this, and let me first start by saying that my content is a little fluctuating over the next couple days, everybody. I'll be completely transparent. I've been unbelievably under the weather over the past 48 to 72 hours, sadly, and because of that, that has derailed a lot of what my usual schedule is. Trying to balance this while also being a dad has been easier said than done. So in case you guys are wondering, where are you at, or why didn't you drop a video or a stream around that time, there is valid reason for it, I promise you, but rest assured, I'm going to do my best to rest up and make sure that I'm all set for what's going to be a massive week here in Mets land. So now let's get into this, everybody. Let's begin with our first topic today, and that has everything to do with the Mets rotation. Let's hear from Mets skipper himself, Carlos Mendoza, as to what that is going to be to begin the regular season. Listen up.
Any more clarity yet on the rotation behind Peralta?
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Let's play a guess game. You got it?
Peterson game 2,
Okay,
Nolan game 3,
okay,
Clay Holmes,
okay.
and Senga.
Any more clarity yet on
So you heard it from the horse's mouth himself, and I don't mean that as an insult. I just mean it as Mendy's the guy that we got to listen to, right? So what does Mendy say? Game 1, it's Freddie. Game 2, it's Peterson. Game 3, it's Nolan. Game 4, we're going to have there, and Clay Holmes. And Game 5 is Kodai Senga. So who's the odd man out? Yes, you guessed it. It's the Samoan Southpaw and Sean Manaea. Here's Carlos Mendoza explaining why Sean Manaea is boxed out of the Mets rotation to begin the season.
Manaea working with this whole?
So we are going to use him on a piggyback tandem, but we're not necessarily going to announce
Which, right.
which game he's going to be pitching. So yeah, that's what we got.
What went into that decision?
6 guys throwing the ball really well, and we were pretty honest with all of them at the beginning of camp. If everyone was healthy, we were going to have to make some tough decisions, and one of them was going to be pitching on that type of role. And the way we see it is he's taking that turn right now, and probably 2 times through the rotation because of the schedule and the off days. We don't feel like we need a 6th starter yet. And he's gonna make starts for us. So this is a couple of times through, making sure guys go through their routine, and we'll revisit when we have to, and maybe there's somebody else's turn at the time, you know. So, but for now, that's kind of the decision there.
Manaea.
So before getting into Sean Manaea's remarks in this, I just want to first give a massive shout out to Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns here. This is exactly how you should have been playing the rotation from the start. And it's really reassuring to see that even after the success that Manaea had in his latest spring training outing, the Mets did not allow the end result get in the way of the rightful concerns. And that has everything to do with Manaea's velocity and inconsistencies from what was truly a not so great 2025 season. Manaea never got in a groove from the oblique injury sustained last spring, rushed back, had a setback, missed an additional month because of that, returns, has loose bodies in his elbow, didn't look good. But you know when Sean Manaea looked his best last year for the most part? It's when he was utilized in piggyback circumstances. Especially, I remember that game like it was yesterday when he came in as a piggyback for Clay Holmes, if I'm not mistaken, in Kansas City, right before the Mets wrapped up their first half, before everything got set for the All-Star break, if I'm not mistaken. So, Sean Manaea is someone who I've always viewed as a really viable option, as a swingman type that the Mets could use in a piggyback circumstance. And it's great to see them do this, because as much as Sean Manaea may say to you, oh, it's just an adrenaline thing, I just need to be in game action, then my velo will show. Well, I'm sorry, Sean, but you have never entered spring training looking this bad with your velocity throughout your career. And regardless of the results that we have seen, everything has looked underwhelming with the stuff. So when you have the amount of quality starters that the Mets have, that many just alluded to, it is going to lead to some tough decisions. And instead of just automatically going with a six-man, I commend the Mets greatly for starting things out, at least as of now, with Sean Manaea being the odd man out and someone who will likely come in after, say, a Clay Holmes or say a Kodai Senga or a David Pearson maybe doesn't go as deep as you want him to. And it's strategic that they're not announcing when Manaea will be utilized just yet, because they don't want to give an upper advantage at all to the Pirates or maybe the next team on their schedule after the fact, just so that way they kind of leave things a bit in question, and for good reason. But now let's hear Sean Manaea and his thoughts about this now that he's no longer officially in the Mets rotation.
You obviously came here with the idea that you were going to be a rotation. I don't want to use the word frustrating, disappointing, disillusioning. Is there anything along the way to not actually be one of those guys taking the ball round and round to begin the year?
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself a starter, and you know, to not be that is frustrating. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to let my pitching do the work, and whatever capacity that is, you know, go from there.
You obviously came here with the idea that you were going to be.
So again, as Sean said himself, obviously he views himself as a starter, and it's disappointing, but he's still going to go out there and do whatever he can to help the Mets. Because at the end of the day, you're getting paid a lot of money to do exactly that, all right, Sean? So listen, when you ink a 3-year, $75 million contract with the Mets, are non-existent your entire first year here, and then you show up to camp the following year after deciding not to get surgery on the loose bodies in your elbow because maybe you're concerned that it could be a precursor to Tommy John. I'm not saying that's how you feel. I'm just saying that is typically at times a reason as to why a pitcher does not get that surgery and decides to do extensive rehab for it. Whatever the case is, Sean Manaea understands that, listen, his value to the organization is shrinking by the second, and he needs to make sure that he can basically just go out there and produce. Because if he goes out there and produces, inevitably he will find himself back in this Mets rotation. Even if it's not for a couple weeks, even if it's not for the first month of the season, all he needs to do is take advantage of the opportunity bestowed upon him in ways that so many pitchers in years past have not for the Mets, unfortunately. So let's see if Sean can go out and run with this in this, say, 3 to 4 inning circumstance when he goes out there. Whatever the case is, like I said, I'm really happy to see this personally as a fan, a talking head, as someone who's going to be actually reporting for the New York Post this year there for not so much in-game coverage, but more so on-field for pre-game, post-game, clubhouse, giving you guys recaps from the games, all that kind of fun stuff. So getting that experience is going to be awesome, and I do look forward to meeting Sean this year at some point and talking about his role with him. And I really do want to ask him just straight up verbatim, you know, his thoughts on kind of what went right for him at the second half of 2024, and what can he do to get back there? Can he do something to get back there? Or is what we saw peak in 2024 something that'll stay that way? And what we're getting more in Sean Manaea, unfortunately, is going to be a continuation of the same. To be determined, obviously, but I'm excited to see what Sean can do and try to run away with now, now that there's a lack of pressure on his shoulders to have to be that guy in this rotation and just go out there and focus on simply getting outs the way that every pitcher should be mainly focused on. Now, going on from Sean Manaea, everybody, let's get into other key takeaways that you guys and gals need to know regarding the New York Mets here, and that has everything to do not only with Sean Manaea, but it has a lot to do also with the Mets outfield configuration, because as we know, the New York Mets did officially announce that, yes, Mike Tauchman went down with injury today. And let me first show you guys what transpired with this injury and why we have our levels of concern naturally as fans, and why I especially am very disappointed to see this as a Mike Tauchman fan. So as you guys can see, Mike Tauchman did try to jog back on the field today. And as he did that, you could see not looking good. So unfortunately, Tauchman ended up leaving today's game after trying to make a play in right field, off the wall. Didn't have a good read on it. Carson Benge does laps around him defensively already. We know this, obviously. But Tauchman tried to make a play. It didn't work out, and because of that, he tried to stay in the game after putting a ball in play for his following at bat, and he tried to come in the next half inning, limped up, left the game, and that's that. So this is what Carlos Mendoza said mid-game in the Mets matchup today in one of their two games. This was specifically against the Houston Astros, talking about what the injury status was at the time with Tauchman, and then I'm going to follow up with that to see if we have any new information that I could share at the time of us recording this video right now. If I don't have any new information now, I may have more information by the time we get to the end of the video, so make sure you follow the timestamps in case there's anything added before this is all wrapped up, because I'm recording this just as the Mets ended their spring training games today.
I don't love to see Mike Tauchman come out of the game the way he did. Give us the latest on that left knee as you know it.
Yeah, I don't have much as of right now. He came in and complained about that left knee. There's some soreness there, so trainers are going to take a look at him right now and see what we're dealing with here.
I don't love to see Mike Tauchman come out of the game the way he.
Yeah, as Gary Apple said perfectly, we don't love to see that either. The only positive I could say about this, because it's left knee soreness, is that it's not his right knee, and that's notable because Mike Tauchman just over the past couple years tore his meniscus in his right knee. So if that was the same knee injury that we were dealing with at the moment, that's no bueno, okay? So now the New York Mets are kind of in a, I don't want to call it a pickle, because they're going to be fine regardless as to what Mike Tauchman's status is, how long or how short he's going to be out. And he is going to be receiving an MRI per Mike Puma of the New York Post. So that was just that was literally just tweeted. I'm not joshing. You guys can see it right there if it'll focus. If not, no worries. But Puma just put that out there. So he's going to get his MRI. And then we're going to go on from there. So very unfortunate news for Tauchman. I'm a big Mike Tauchman fan. You guys know that if you've been following the platform. I've been a heavy advocate for his well before the Mets even signed him this past offseason, because I knew he'd be a perfect fit for the Mets. We're looking for as a veteran that could be added to the outfield, but not a guy that necessarily needs to play every day. But now that Tauchman looks like he is now in jeopardy of starting the season on time with the New York, obviously this can change. The Mets opening day is not still for 5 days or so at the time of us talking right now, so a little under a week for Tauchman to be ready. But knowing that this happened, and if there's anything to be overly concerned by, the Mets are not going to have Mike Tauchman on the roster to begin opening day. But here's the interesting about this, right? Because I think we can all agree Mike Tauchman was always going to be making this Mets team as long as something like this did not happen. And Tauchman has a opt-out clause in his contract on March 25th, the day before opening day, if I'm not mistaken. Now, do I think that opt-out clause will be accepted if we find out that he's going to be out with injury and will not be with the team right away? I don't see why it would, because I think Tauchman knows very well that he will be on this Mets team, whether it's getting some starts in right, at DH, or off the bench, as soon as he's healthy and ready to go, okay? The great expectation that we have known for a while is that both Carson Benge and Mike Tauchman were going to be making this Mets team for opening day. And I don't really view that as anything different. Just now giving this ailment to Tauchman, it makes things a bit easier for the Mets to just further establish that, yes, Carson Benge is 100% making this team. Anyone that pays attention would tell you the exact same thing. I've been telling you guys this literally since camp started, and Benge has ran away in so many ways of right field in a great way. But now, if Tauchman, say, let's talk hypotheticals here for a second, if he is not going to be ready for Mets opening day, then they will either defer to one of Christian Pache, who's had a fantastic spring for the Mets, very solid outfield type as a 4th, 5th outfielder, but not a guy that you want to get much reps at the major league level, or Vidal Brujan, who could be that backup shortstop for you. It's fitting how I've been on record many times over the past week saying that Vidal Brujan is not cracking this Mets team out of camp. There's no way it's happening. They don't have a clear need for a backup shortstop. And while that holds true, they may not need to have a clear need for a backup shortstop, but they just need to fill that roster spot at the end of the day. And knowing that the Mets are going with a 5-man rotation and Manaea is going to be in the swingman spot, it puts them in a position where they can comfortably go about their bench in maybe ways that you, the fans, thought was going to be a little bit of a uncomfortable decision for them to make. I never really viewed it as that because I've been very confident from what I've heard throughout the Mets organization, as well as just what I know, that Tauchman and Benge are the guys to beat there, for those roster spots. But very unfortunate news for Tauchman. I just hope that it's nothing serious, that this is just a minor setback, and that he can still be ready for opening day. And God forbid, as you guys see there, him trying to just make it work. That's the play and right that caused all the issues here, sadly. And if he can't be ready for opening day, it's okay. You got a whole season to worry about, right? So he's not a guy that you need right on this roster 100% right away to begin the year, or the Mets are going to have a complete lack of success. His injury, as much as I appreciate Mike Tauchman, should not, by any stretch of imagination, be a detriment to the club, okay? So that's all I have to really say about that right now. But just hoping and praying that it's not a tear, it's nothing overly serious, and that Tauchman will return. Because if not, then obviously it's going to open the floodgates more for a Pache, for a Vidal Brujan, maybe to a lesser degree a Christian Arroyo. And if Tauchman hypothetically is out long term, which would be the worst news, and that's something I really hope and pray is not the case, then one does have to wonder, how much of a leash are the Mets going to give to some of their guys on the minors before considering them more at the major league level? As we know, Nick Morabito will be beginning the year for the Mets that we're going to see in AAA, along with Ryan Clifford, two guys I fully expect to be at the major league level this year, just to varying degrees. And then in AA, Chris Suero and AJ Ewing are beginning the year there. But how long is AJ Ewing going to be in AA? It honestly should not be longer than a month. If AJ Ewing is still with the Rummel Ponies a month into the season and he's continuing to do what he did all last year and this spring training, then I think the Mets are just wasting potential in this being a kid that could impact us sooner rather than later this year at the major league level. But I would love to hear your thoughts down below regarding Sean Manaea, the Mets rotation status, Mike Tauchman's injury, and now, as we are not surprised to hear or see this, let me reaffirm for each and every one of you what was stated as of the past day from a man that I'm now going to be working with, which is interesting, along with Mike Puma, that being and Joel Shermuth for the New York Post. This is what Joel had to say yesterday. Listen up.
Carson Benge has made this team. The Mets have not announced that officially. And unless the Mets are committed to a Tauchman-Taylor combination in right field, then Benge is going to make it. It wasn't like David Stearns stood up at a podium and said he's going to make the team. But part of his press conference right after the 2025 collapse, he would leave an open spot for young players. And he's talked specifically that Benge would go to spring training with a chance to win a job. It's not just that the numbers are good, and the numbers are very good, but numbers could be deceiving in spring. If you watch Benge play baseball, he looks like he belongs with a major league group. He moves that way on the field. He moves that way among his teammates. And I think it would look and send the wrong message to the rest of the prospect base if Benge honored exactly what David Stearns asked him to honor, and then he didn't make this team. If he finishes first or second for NL Rookie of the Year, he gets a full year of service time. If he finishes first and the Mets keep him on the roster the whole year, the Mets would get a draft pick if he wins Rookie of the Year after the first round in 2027. There's every reason in the world for him to be on this roster, and I think you could connect the dots from Bo Bichette playing shortstop on Friday to Carson Benge making this Mets team.
Sorry about that, everybody. I was just trying to get back to where I need to be slide-wise. So Carson Benge's numbers speak for themselves down below. That's from his 2025 stat line across 3 different levels that we saw in the minor leagues. I've been raving about Benge since literally May of last year, if not earlier. We've been on top of Benge and his continued production for a while now. And, Joel put it perfectly. Why would David Stearns go out of his way to reiterate to the media constantly throughout the offseason that we're going to allow an open spot in our outfield for Carson Benge really run with it. You know, why would you go out of your way to make these remarks and basically have the floodgates open just for Benge to try to secure this spot? All he needs to do is produce in order to get that. It actually happens. You're feeling electric. You're feeling great. You're feeling awesome about yourself, Carson. And then bam, lo and behold, you come to find out that, oh yeah, you're still not making the team. That was never going to be the case. And that's why people, some of you guys who follow me, who have been giving me flack back and forth saying, Carson Benge is not a lock to make this team. He has been. He literally has been since the start of camp. I can tell you this in confidence with people that I speak to around the Mets organization. As long as Benge produced, there was never any hesitation about whether or not he would be making this team. And Carson Benge's value is so immense to this club immediately because not only are you passing baton from one true homegrown outfielder in Brandon Nimmo to now the next in Benge, who is likely going to be the best homegrown outfielder the Mets have had since Brandon Nimmo because, you know, the Drew Gilberts didn't work out. The Jared Kelnicks didn't work out. The PCAs didn't happen, obviously, at least not here. So Carson Benge is in this perfectly prime position to run away. He's looked tremendous every single game. Yesterday against the Cardinals, he was awesome again, heading for opposite field the way that he typically does, making great catches in right field, making Mike Tauchman look like a guy who doesn't know how to field all that well. That's not a slant on Tauchman. It's just a further appreciation for the young greatness that is Carson Benge. And I've been saying this for a while, and I really want to reiterate this to each and every one of you. My confidence level in Carson Benge is so high and so pronounced that while, of course, he may have an adjustment period, and maybe he has a far more drastic adjustment period to the major league level than we thought. I don't anticipate that to be the case, but I'll play devil's advocate and say that's a possibility because obviously it is. Carson Benge, if everything works out right for him this year, in my opinion, has all the makings of being as valuable to the New York Mets as what Jackson Merrill was in his rookie season for the San Diego Padres 2 years ago. And it's fitting considering Jackson Merrill broke out on the scene 2 years ago for the Padres, filling the void of Juan Soto in that outfield as Soto was traded that prior offseason to the Yankees. So the idea of a Carson Benge kind of lighting the world on fire as soon as he makes his major league debut and continues to run with it is something that I don't even think is necessarily just a possibility. I almost think it's beyond feasible. You know, I almost expect this. Maybe the power won't be there to start the way that Jackson Merrill exemplified so brilliantly, going gap to gap and hitting homers constantly early. I mean, Jackson Merrill's a great story. Last year, too, he was a little Jekyll and Hyde, but he rebounded nicely once he was back and fully healthy. I mean, I see a lot of similarities between the two of just young, very promising outfield prospects bursting on the scene at the major league level and never really looking back. And that's the best scenario where Carson Benge this year. Worst scenario is that he doesn't adjust well, he gets sent back down to AAA, and he becomes kind of a non-factor for the Mets in a year where they thought he was going to be somewhat of an X factor. You know, to be determined as to what exactly those results are going to be. But the point here stands. The stuff is legit with Carson Benge. As Joel has stated, he's established himself so well in the clubhouse, on the field. And as I've been telling you guys for a long time with all the homework I've done on Benge, it's how he carries himself. He's never too high. He's never too low. He's just right. You know, just like your Bears' favorite porridge, right? He's never a guy that looks like he's getting ahead of himself. And he's just taking everything for what it is every single time he gets to the plate, as well as when he's there in the outfield. And he's playing loose. He's playing fun. And I really think he's just savoring every second of this opportunity being bestowed upon him. So shout out to Carson Benge. Congratulations on making this team. And I'm saying congratulations because it's inevitably going to get announced by the Mets in the coming days, okay? If you don't think Carson Benge isn't making this Mets team at this point, I not only have a bridge to sell you, I have a million bridges to sell you, okay? So that's what I have to say there on Benge. You guys can let me know your thoughts about him in the comments down below. Because now to go on from talking about Carson, let's get into our next key topic in this one, and that is going to be not regarding Carson, but rather what has happened with the Mets and their latest spring training games. Because just to talk briefly on the game that Benge was involved in, the Mets did lose to the St. Louis Cardinals yesterday 4-3. Benge was in leadoff, was productive, had his hit, had his walk, batting .412 with a .987 OPS a spring. Kind of good if you ask me. Tyrone Taylor didn't record a hit after he went 0-3 with a run scored. Then we saw Bo Bichette get the start at shortstop because the Mets want to give him that lone look there, just in case they need to call on him in a pinch if, say, Lindor has a setback or something, even though we don't anticipate that to happen at this point in time. And I will say this, too, speaking of Lindor, it is notable that we haven't really seen him in game action since he made his spring debut for the Mets. One does have to wonder, are the Mets going to get him in any more game action before the regular season is upon us? I'd imagine that he'll get in one more game, but we'll just have to wait and see. You not only have Bo Bichette, who again went 0 for 2 at shortstop, but still having a very strong sprain. Mark Vientos went over 3 yesterday. Thankfully, he did not go over 3 today, and we'll get into that here shortly. Tauchman didn't record a hit yesterday. Vito Brujan did. He went 1 for 3. Hayden Senger has been officially sent down by the Mets. He went 0 for 1 yesterday. Jared Young went 0 for 4. Jared Young, what did he do just like MJ Melendez? Did himself no favors by trying to compete for a Mets roster spot by going to the World Baseball Classic. I completely understand why and represent your country, so please do not think this is me trying to talk down against that. I'm one of the more vocal pro World Baseball Classic Mets fans out there, I'd like to say. I really do enjoy the World Baseball Classic. It's an electric environment. Nothing even touches it in the baseball space from what I've personally experienced in my life thus far. Having said that, if you are a player entering camp competing for a roster spot, there are so many things that can go against you by deciding not to stay with the team in camp fully and instead go to a team where you're not even guaranteed playing time. Like Jared Young did not get as consistent playing time as I think he would have hoped at times for Team Canada. And, MJ Melendez did not get nearly as many reps as you thought he would for Team Puerto Rico, even with the lack of depth that they had thanks to the insurance issues where a lot of their top players were not able to play, separate from Francisco Lindor. So, when I look at Jared Young and a guy who's likely going to be beginning the year in AAA, if he's not, say, going to come off the bench for the Mets, maybe because of Tauchman, I'm just saying to myself, you could have helped yourself here, okay? Like, yes, maybe it would have looked better if he performed in the WBC, of course, but like, at the end of the day, you had so many guys leaving camp. That was prime time for you to try to take advantage of getting consistent reps and opportunity because of the other guys going to the WBC. And instead, you decided to go rep your country in Canada, which I respect. Completely get that, especially if that's the only opportunity in your career you may get a chance to do that. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying from a roster competition standpoint, it's not going to do you any favors. And what are we seeing? Pretty much exactly that in the case of Young and Melendez, barring changes. Could things change now, given Tauchman's status? Maybe when MJ Melendez? Possibly. But MJ's on a split contract, so I don't think it's a lock that he's going to make this team just because the Tauchman injury. I think, if anything, that's a bigger slap in the face of Christian Pache, who deservedly so has found himself in this conversation to this point as someone who should be really considered to crack this team for opening day off the bench at minimum. So that's what I have to say about that. Antonio Jimenez got the start at third base, and that was that. Tobias Myers allowed 1 earned run in 2 innings. He looks solid, though. I love Tobias Myers this spring. He finished his spring with a 2.3 ERA. Very excited for Tobias Myers this year. I think I might be one of the most excited Mets fans for Tobias Myers this year. You guys let me know down below. Are you as hyped up about Tobias Myers as I am and his role for the Mets this year? We talk about Sean Manaea being this piggyback option for the Mets for one of their starters in their rotation turn of a 5-man rotation. But Tobias Myers is another interesting element to this because he too can be utilized in piggyback circumstances, or as a spot starter, or as just a quality reliever for you if you don't want him as a starter. So various ways to go about it with him, but it's been great to see the production he's had this spring. Luke Weaver won 1 scoreless inning. He did not allow a single run all spring. Shout out to him. Brooks Raley had himself a scoreless inning. We love ourselves some Brooks Raley dominance. Gomez, Garcia, and Gieber were in, and they did not allow a run. But you know who got rocked yet again, everybody? It's Brian Hudson, the 6'8" lefty. He now has a over 16 ERA this spring and allowed 3 earned runs in 1 inning. So Brian Hudson, who's been competing for that final bullpen spot for the New York Mets. What did I tell you guys in my segment for the New York Post earlier this week in Manhattan? Craig Kimbrell's going to be the final piece of the puzzle in this Mets bullpen. And what we just saw yesterday was another prime example of exactly that. Hudson doesn't nearly have the track record. He doesn't have nearly the stuff right now. And as much as the Mets could use another lefty in their bullpen, I'm sure that they would prefer Dickie Lovelady now over Brian Hudson. Because while you usually like to take spring results with a grain of salt, that's 100% valid and true. What's also true is when you're competing for spots, these results matter a bit more, right? That goes without saying. So if you're a veteran lefty trying to crack the final spot in the bullpen, and pardon my French, but you look like dog shit in spring training, you can't expect to make this team out of camp. It just likely isn't going to happen. So listen, is it possible? Sure. Will I be very surprised at this rate? Yes, I'd imagine Brian Hudson will begin the year in the minor leagues for the Mets in AAA, and then they'll call upon him when they need someone in a pinch or when Craig Kimbrell looks bad, maybe a week or two in the season, or someone goes down with injury. You know these things are inevitable. You know that they're going to rotate pitchers like no tomorrow in the bullpen. We just got to make sure that's not as incompetent as the Mets were last year by utilizing more pitchers at the Major League level than any other team in Major League Baseball history at one calendar season in which David Stearns, Carlos Mendoza, and the Mets did in 2025. Can I please forget? Please give me every reason to forget about 2025 this year, Mets. I'm begging you. I'm really begging you. It was so brutal to cover last year, and I'm not covering another what felt like almost a full season of just utter garbage from the Amazons, especially from June onward. I mean, oh my God, I'm just getting a headache and my head's throbbing thinking about it. Let's get on to our next topic here, and that's some more of these spring results, okay? Because while the Mets did not fare well in that matchup against the Cardinals, let's see how they fared in their other games, and we'll talk briefly about the game that they actually, well, initially I thought they won. Unfortunately, that was not true. Mark Vientos gave the New York Mets a late lead that we saw against the Washington Nationals in their split squad game that was not broadcasted. The Mets did go on to still lose 3-1, however. Vientos, as you see beside me celebrating, did smoke his first home run of spring, over 100 off the bat. Congratulations, Vientos. His second hit this spring, if I'm not mistaken, which is insane to say. But he got all that one to finally put a ball in play and finally be productive. So Mark Vientos, as spring training is almost wrapped up, he hits his first bomb this spring. He's still batting .057 with a .279 OPS. Typically, players with those kind of performances wouldn't make the team out of camp, but the Mets know the value in Vientos. They know he doesn't have any minor league options left, and they would much prefer to not lose him for nothing if they don't have to. So as of now, expect Mark Vientos to begin the regular season, barring changes on the Mets bench. Carson Benge did not record a hit in that game. He actually went 0 for 4, a rare 0 for 4 day. But to give credit where credit's due, Cade Cavalli pitched unbelievably well against the Mets today. And Cade Cavalli, for those that don't recall, is a top pitching prospect for the Washington Nationals that unfortunately, right as he was getting his major league career started, what felt like a year ago or so, he sadly went down with I'm actually trying to think now. Cade Cavalli, he, not long after making his major league debut, he sadly went down with, I think it was Tommy John or some form of ailment. He has not pitched at the major league level all that much. We saw him last year in 10 starts. He finally got himself back there to a 4.25 ERA, but he was away for a good period of time. I think that's why I'm really not thinking of Cade much, mainly just because of the fact that Cavalli is someone who really did not do a whole lot last year, was finally starting to get back into it, and I was probably too tapped out with the Mets by then to be worrying about what a team like the Nationals were doing, as they were more in a rebuild/retool stage now. But Cavalli looked good. He looked very good against the Mets today, and he deserves credit for that. Joander Suarez looked awesome for the Mets too, and Suarez is this sneaky arm that has managed to stay in the Mets farm, and I have a feeling that Joander Suarez is going to be, for what the New York Mets got in Daniel Nunez 2 years ago, this season. Joander has bounced between AA and AAA and has fluctuated with success, but he's had some good looks. And today he won 4 scoreless innings, allowed just 1 hit, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. Very good. Will Watson looked fantastic too. One of the high-rising Mets pitchers in the farm last year. Watson went 3.1 shutty today, which was awesome. Matt Turner gave up a couple runs in 2 innings, and then Dakota Hawkins allowed 1 run and not even 1 out. So that was the pitching. And then offensively, again, the Mets only had 5 hits for the Nationals, 7. Vidal Brujan was the key standout offensively, as he went 2 for 4 at second base, batting 6th. And Jacob Reimer won 1 for 3 at third base, who I love, and ripped himself a double. Mark Vientos hit that homer, but that's about that. That's really all you need to know from that game. So let's talk about the other game, and that's regarding the Mets against the Astros. And let's begin today with the pitching, okay? And the pitching, as you guys can see here, that was the Suarez numbers I was just relaying. So now let me show you guys the pitching, the takeaways from the Mets against the Astros here. So give me just 1 second so I could put this slide in, because I thought I had set up, but typical me, I did not. But no worries, we're just going to change it on the fly right here, right now, because it takes literally 2 seconds. So let's go from that, and now let's go to this, and now let's talk about the pitching, okay? So Jonathan got the start for the New York Mets today. He did allow 3 earned runs, no walks, which is always great to see. 5 strikeouts in 6 innings. It goes without saying, Ton is obviously beginning the year in AAA for the New York Mets and Syracuse, but hopefully he's someone that can be impactful for the Mets at the Major League level. throughout the year. Even if it's not until the second half, the Mets' depth should keep them okay in that regard. We know how nasty Ton's stuff is, and I think getting more seasoning in AAA is only going to bode him well to get really his professional career more on track to where he wants it to be. And expand more on Ton as to what stood out about him today when we break down his arsenal a bit. I will say this right away regarding Jonah. The changeup looked good, and that was a standout for him today. He got a lot of swing and miss on his changeup today, which you should be encouraged by as a Mets fan, because that's not typically something that we have seen all that much. He's fluctuated a lot with the changeup usage, especially this spring. So to see him throw the kitchen sink out there, look solid with his velocity, nothing overly concerning today. Again, he allowed 6 hits, 3 earned runs. Of course, you guys are going to have the reactions that you're going to have, regardless of that spring training. But Ton just having a normal spring start, nothing that I really have to be worried about, because, again, the Mets don't need to bank on him to begin the year. Just get these spring reps in, work on your stuff, work on that changeup, work on that cutter, which he did a lot to begin spring training, and then go on from there. You see Gomez had himself 0.2 scrolls. Daniel Duarte had a scroll setting. Joe Jacques, who I'm not really a big fan of, the veteran lefty, he had a scroll setting. My dog, my boy, they massacred my boy. Cue the Godfather. We got our boy Ryan Lambert here, and sadly, Lambert did not have a good day. In just 0.1 innings, he gave up a hit, but did allow 3 earned runs and 2 walks. Ryan Lambert's first bad outing this spring is what it feels like. But when you've only pitched in, 3 or 4 innings and you have 1 bad outing this inflated, of course it's going to skyrocket your ERA, sadly. So Ryan Lambert, who will likely be beginning the year in AAA, if I had to assume, I don't believe the Mets have officially announced it yet. He should be beginning the year in AAA after the great success he had in AA as the closer for the Rumble Ponies as they won the Eastern League Championship. Lambert is someone who I think is going to be fantastic for the Mets at some point this year in their bullpen. Just might not be right away. So that was pretty much the key standouts from the pitching end for the Mets and their defeat against the Astros today, 7-5. They were losing for a while. They rallied back late as Marcus Semien cleared the bases, which was great. But then the Astros pounced back there that we saw in the 9th inning or so against Ryan Lambert. And that was it. So, the Mets don't have a lot of winning as of late that we've seen, and this was how the lineup ended for their matchup against the Nationals. So let me go ahead and pull up for each and every one of you how the lineup ended for the Mets and their matchup against the Astros here. And again, this is how it ended, not how it started. So I'll break down extensively here in a second what the Mets starting lineup today was against Houston, how they fared, and ultimately how it ended up the way that it did, as you guys can now see beside me. So starting from the top against Houston today, we saw the New York Mets as follows. In this one, they had batting leadoff for the Mets. They had Francisco Lindor. And I would actually like to completely correct myself. I have no clue why I said earlier in this video that Lindor has not been in game action when I literally was watching him earlier today. I think between 1, I'm not feeling the best, and 2, the Mets had split squad. I just got completely thrown a wrench. So I apologize for that. Lindor, as we know, did in fact get the start today for the Mets that we saw leading off at shortstop against the Astros. He did not record a hit, but it was great to see him at short getting those reps for at least 4 at-bats. Kevin, I'm going to butcher the last name, starts with a V. You see it right there. Did record a hit, and that's all. Juan Soto went 0 for 3. I can care less. Juan Soto is going to perform. We know he will. You see Simone Juan come in after him, the former top IFA signing by the Mets a couple years ago. He went 0 for 2. Bo Bichette had a 2 for 3 day at DH today, the rare DH day for Bo Bichette. So he was productive. Will Hoyt came in and went 0 for 1. Jorge Polanco's looked so good all spring long. He got the start at first today and looked very good both defensively and offensively. 2 for 4 with a run scored for Polanco. Our dog, my dog, your dog, Luis Robert, had a great sliding grab in center today, as well as a nice hit there to left that we saw off of Burrows. Nice to see that. 1 for 3 with a run scored. And Roberts just doing his thing and a walk. Rudick came in after him as a pinch runner and then came in center field. Brett Beatty went 0 for 2 at third base with a run scored. We saw Ben Rorvik come in after him to play catcher and went 0 for 1. Rorvik did himself no favors trying to make this team as a third catcher, at least. I think Austin Barnes is in a better position, barring changes. We'll see. Marcus Semien, 1 for 3 with the, again, bases clearing hit that he had in this one, which was nice later on in the ball game. Himself 3 RBIs. Mike Tauchman went 0 for 1 and then went out with injury. Salgado, who came in after him that we saw in right field, went 3 for 3 with a run scored. He's looked very good. Shout out to AJ Salgado there. We saw Mosquera at third base after Semien looked, okay. He went 0 for 1. Francisco Alvarez had a little oppo bloopy today. That was nice for him to drive in a run. He went 1 for 3. And Wyatt Young at second base went 0 for 1 after the fact. So that's what you guys need to know. Outside of, the Mets, they won 3 for 7 with runners in scoring position in this matchup, so not terrible. Pitching-wise, we broke that down already, so that's how the lineup started versus this is how it ended that you guys can see beside me. So continue to let me know your thoughts on all of that, should you have interest, and thank you guys and gals kindly for exactly that, because the Mets finished this game with 11 hits to the Astros 9, and the final thing that I want to break down for you guys from this matchup was who smoked baseballs the hardest, and you want to know who had the hardest hit today? It was AJ Salgado. Did a very good job. The infielder, coming in right field after the fact, Salgado had himself a 110-mile-per-hour single. Francisco Alvarez had a ground out at roughly 110. We also had Brett Beatty at a flat at 105, and Bichette at a ground out at 105. Simeon's double that cleared the bases was 105 off the bat, which was nice, and Bo Bichette's single that he had today, one of his 2, was 104. So nice hard hit baseballs by the Mets today, and what was a faltering effort to the Houston Astros today. And now as we hop back to the main slide here, I'm just going to double check my notes to make sure that I don't miss anything to break down with each and every one of you, because I do believe that we broke down every single thing that we had to get into in this one. So Mets fans, I would like to thank you again so much for watching. Please let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below from not only the Mets rotation stats, Sean Manaea, Mike Tauchman, Carson Benge, all the game highlights and a recap and everything else in between. Be on the lookout as we have some really big announcements coming next week as we get set for opening day. But these announcements will also be somewhat contingent as to what's going on with me and my health status. So don't worry, I'm going to be okay, but I'm just unfortunately just going through very, very frustrating and annoying thing I haven't dealt with over the past couple days. So trying to deal with this on the fly while balancing the work schedule, the dad life personal schedule has been easier said than done. So thank you for your patience in advance. But I'll talk to you guys again soon. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets. Peace out, everybody. Thank you again.